I don't know if everyone saw this, but it's making the rounds. And apparently Marjorie Taylor Greene was on TYT for an interview with Cenk Uygur to talk about anti-war movement, an area that they have in common. But I noticed something during this conversation, and I'm going to show you guys a moment where Cenk did not push back on that. I think was will be revealing for people if they watch the entire interview, because that's towards the end of it. There was something that Marjorie Taylor Greene said when she was questioned about Israel in particular that I think should give people pause. I'm also going to show you a comparison to the way that she responded to Cenk Uygur about the protesters compared to the way that she responded to Piers Morgan about it. So we need to ask the question, what's really going on with MTG? Let's go ahead and bring in this part of the interview here. We have different moments that we want to discuss. Let's dive in here.
But Representative Greene, we're having these conversations because the Trump administration is filled with neocons. If it wasn't filled with neocons, we wouldn't need this conversation. He said anti-war. You're very clear about that. You're super clear about that. I'm clear about it. But all of a sudden, we're having a conversation about how we might go to war. So how do you think the neocons got there, and how powerful do you think they are within the Trump administration?
Well, I would say they're powerful on both sides of the aisle, to be honest with you. We saw Democrats in the House and Senate vote overwhelmingly to fund the war in Ukraine. And we saw Republicans do the same thing in the House and the Senate. So,
pause. Did everybody notice what she just did there? He specifically asked her about Donald Trump having neocons in his cabinet, and she said both parties have this issue. Did you notice that? And it's true that both parties do have neocons, but he was specifically asking her about Trump's administration. What she's doing right here is she's showing people, and everybody that saw this interview on TYT, and this should be interesting. She's showing everybody that both parties have this issue, that both parties are warmongers. There may be said politicians that don't support the wars, but the parties, for the most part, do, because they're bought off by Wall Street and the military-industrial complex, right? So I'm really curious to see how some of the viewers responded to that. Let's continue.
I would say this is not a one-party problem. This is a two-party problem. And this is also the military-industrial complex that is very, very powerful, because they keep, no matter what administration it is, they somehow find a way to get their foreign wars. However, I really give President Trump a lot of credit for standing up against this. And the announcement he said today was, I think, extremely significant. But we still have a long ways to go. And no matter who is president of the United States, it's the most powerful person in the world. That's who President Trump is right now. And everybody is texting him, calling him, and doing everything they can to get in the Oval Office or to somehow find time with him on the weekends. So I don't think they'll let up anytime soon. But I will say this, I think it's up to the American people to continue to voice their concerns and express what they want out of this government. And I think that's important no matter who's in charge. And so I hope we continue to have this conversation, and I hope we continue to just make sure what people want is said louder than the small minority here in Washington, D.C. that wants more foreign wars.
So did everybody catch that? Because basically what she did there, she was making sure that she wouldn't have to criticize Donald Trump. And it's true, like I said, there are neocons in both parties. Both parties have become warmongers. Like, we all know this. I've talked about this multiple times on the show. But she was making sure that she would not have to really criticize him specifically. And that's what Cenk was trying to get her to do. Let's go on to this next part here, which I also thought was pretty interesting. Check this out.
And about how we were going to take over Gaza and we were going to own Gaza and we were going to take care of the unexploded bombs for Israel in Gaza. I assume you're against all that?
Yes, I'm not supporting that. I'm not interested in taking over some part of the Middle East. I'm unapologetically American, and I can't repeat that message loud enough and over again. We've got people in Western North Carolina, East Tennessee, and Northeast Georgia that their homes have still not been rebuilt from Hurricane Helene. Look it over in California, Malibu, where many people's homes were destroyed from the wildfires. And we could name different parts of the country, Lahaina, Hawaii, and on and on. And before we go in and try to clean up anybody else's mess or pay for reconstruction in any country, whether it's Gaza or Ukraine, and I don't think we should be doing that either. I think we should rebuild here in America and help Americans first.
Okay. So what is good about this is that she made it very clear she does not agree with the U.S. trying to take over Gaza and all that type of stuff. And then she brought the focus back to domestic. I really want people to pay attention to what is being done here. Really pay attention to this. Because what Marjorie Taylor Greene has learned how to do is she has learned how to take a message and reconnect it back to issues at home. You don't have to like her. I don't like her. She's not my cup of tea. But this is why she continues to win. She is connecting it back to the issues at home. So she mentioned Lahaina. She mentioned people in North Carolina that still don't have their homes rebuilt after the flood in Asheville, other places as well. So does everybody see that little pivot there that she did? So she said she was against what was happening there with the U.S. trying to take over. She doesn't agree to that. But she made sure to put the focus back on why are we trying to rebuild some other entity when we have people here in the United States that lost their homes and haven't gotten them back. And that is why someone like her continues to win. This is something I think that Democrats are not the best on. Because people ask this question, they continue to say, why do people continue to vote for her? Because she continues to stand up and advocate for her constituents. She continues to bring it back to issues at home. But don't get excited, because there's another part coming up that I thought was very revealing. And he didn't push back on her about this. Let's continue.
All right, let's go to America and as these issues affect us here at home. So now people are getting snatched up off the streets. Mahmoud Halil, Öztürk, who wrote an op-ed against Israel or criticizing the current Israeli government. And now they're arrested and potentially deported. And they were here legally on visas or as on green cards. Seems to be a direct attack on freedom of speech. What's your stance on those arrests?
Well, I think freedom of speech extends to Americans. I haven't really been vocal on any of those issues. That's been more some of my other Republican colleagues that have been addressing those issues. I think being an American citizen is a pretty special privilege. But if you're here on a visa or a green card, then I think you should be respectful towards America and the people that we stand with. And so if they've done something wrong, then I have no problem with them being deported.
Pause. Did everybody catch it? So she's a big supporter of free speech. And what she's saying is that they're here on a visa or a green card. Basically, what she's saying is that those people should not have free speech. See, this is why, and I've said this before. Either you're free speech or you're not free speech. This whole like, I'm pro free speech, but wait a minute, you criticize Israel, no. Or I'm pro free speech, but wait a minute, you have a visa or a green card, no. pay attention, because what I noticed is I saw some people cheering Marjorie Taylor Greene on because she was the one that put a stop to that bill, which we'll get to, a stop to that bill that was basically going to try to criminalize Americans boycotting like Israel and all that type of stuff, which is absolutely freaking ridiculous, right? But it was scary to me because I started to see people who are leftists and they were saying like, see, we need to, she's an ally for us and da-da-da. And I'm like, no, no, she's not. She's not. Let's continue.
Right. If it turns out that the reporting is accurate, and Öztürk as an example, the Turkish student up in Tufts, she just wrote an op-ed. Didn't do anything else, didn't say anything against America, just criticizing Israel and calling for an economic boycott. The Supreme Court has said that freedom of speech and our Constitution applies to everybody in the country, including resident aliens, that's legal aliens who have a green card, and people on visas. So it could corrode our freedom of speech if they're not allowed to criticize Israel. Does it bother you that it's just this one country that you're not allowed to criticize here in America, no matter what your status is?
Wait for it.
Well, I definitely stand for people's free speech. That is something that I'm on record doing, even speech that I disagree with. Let me tell you, probably a lot of people watching this show have said horrible speech against me, probably in my comments and all over social media, and probably on the show you guys have probably said ugly speech against me. So but I still stand as a United States representative defending free speech, and I think I defend free speech probably more than most members of Congress, including many Democrats that you say a lot of nice things about. And I want to make sure that for the record, everyone knows that I single-handedly came out so hard against a boycott bill that was going to be brought to the floor on Monday because I thought it was a violation of free speech that I took it down, and it wasn't voted on this week. And because I believe Americans have the right to buy or boycott any product or country that they want. So I have a very strong record, as well as I've defended Julian Assange, Eric Snowden, and many others. So I believe our First Amendment and our free speech is incredibly important. I'm not familiar with this young lady's op-ed. I haven't read it, and I'm not familiar with the details of this story. So because I don't know all those details, it's hard for me to give you an exact opinion on this.
Yeah, I understand.
So very interesting. She's not familiar with the young woman from Tufts that we showed before on the show, who's being held right now. But what I want you to understand is when she's talking about free speech, she means for American citizens. She made it pretty clear on the show. She doesn't mean that for someone who has a visa or someone who is a green card holder. People have to understand this. And I saw people like just take this and kind of run with it, right? Let's go to the next part. Because we have so much to discuss, guys.
Revolt in this case that blocked that bill in the Congress.
That was me. I came out first with my opposition to the bill, and I announced that I would be voting no to this boycott bill, because again, I believe Americans should be able to buy or boycott whatever product or country that they want to. Look what we did to Budweiser. We took Budweiser down, and that happened during the campaign, and that happened from MAGA, that happened from people on the right. So I believe in Americans' ability to be able to do things like that. But I don't lean into this. I think there's this movement that a lot of people are either they're for Israel or they're against Israel. I don't lean into any of that. I think Israel is a country that's doing just fine on their own. They have a great economy. They certainly don't have the amount of debt that we have. They have their own nuclear weapons, and they've already demonstrated they have a very capable military. We have voted a lot of votes, a lot of resolutions against anti-Semitism in Congress. But for me and my public statements on this issue is that I would like to see in the House of Representatives, we need to be doing more votes and focusing on the agenda that we campaigned for and the American people voted for in November of 2024. And I would like to see us putting our country before other countries. And that's not a for or against or any of that stuff. I just think we need to focus on what the campaign was about.
Yeah.
So notice here, she brings it up again that she was the one that brought that forward. And I want to go ahead and show you that, and we'll get back to the segment there. This part right here. So she was the one. Right-wing Republicans, not Democrats, killed the bill. I shall say no more. And see, people see this, and this is what I was saying. Rare right-wing revolt sinks bill punishing boycotts of Israel with prison. So what she was just referring to in that interview, she said she was the one who led the charge that said, hell no, we're not going to bring this bill forward because that is a problem for free speech, right? So that part there is important. However, what is strange to me is that the Democratic Party continues to allow the Republican Party to get ahead on said actions that really you should expect to come from the Democratic Party, right? Because it used to be the Democratic Party was the party that was for the working class. They cared about like free speech, etc., wanted to really care for the people. And you would have expected a Democrat politician to say, no, 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 let's lead the charge to kill this bill. But instead, you have Marjorie Taylor Greene that does it. So then what happens is, this is what I said before about that pendulum swinging from one side to the other side. Then what happens is, said like Democrat, voters that are upset with the Democratic Party, they start to look at Marjorie Taylor Greene and see her as a better option. And so instead of people taking a step back and saying both of these parties are corrupt, because they are, now they swing from one party to the other. So they swing from one side to the other, and the pendulum just keeps people going back and forth. And when that happens, people never break free of the duopoly and start something new or participate in something new. This part right here, when he asked her about Israel.
I think, I love our Jewish American brothers and sisters, and I think they're some of the best fighters for peace. And so to me, the issue of religion and the issue of a foreign government are completely separate. Do you agree with that?
Oh, of course. And you know what? Listen, I'm a Christian. My savior is a Jew, and that's Jesus. And so look, I have no problem with Israel. I think they're doing great. They're a great country.
Right there. We can pause it right there. So for the people who started to get their hopes up throughout the segment, then you get to that part. And she said she has no problem with Israel. Israel is committing a genocide. Israel is bombing multiple countries at the same time. They've broke through Syria. They're bombing Syria, they're bombing Lebanon, they're bombing Yemen, they're bombing Gaza, they're bombing the West Bank. Israel is a problem. And this is the part that people needed to hear. She said she has no problem with Israel. So if you say you're anti-war, I'm done with these wars, I want to deal with these wars, but then you say you have no problem with Israel, who is bombing several countries in the Middle East right now, what does that mean to you guys? This was something that I noticed, and I called this out before. There were a number of people like Tulsi Gabbard who were against the war in Ukraine, and they spoke at these anti-war rallies. But the moment after October 7th, they turned into straight up war hawks and said, go after Hamas, give Israel whatever they need, get rid of the Islam, Tulsi especially. All of a sudden it changed. Once the country changes to Israel, all of a sudden it's okay to be for war. After everything that Israel has done and is still doing, how can you say you have no problem with Israel? Let's go on a little bit more.
As well as many other countries are. And criticism about anything is something. I have a pretty good reputation of criticizing things that I think are wrong. And, you referenced where I've been accused of anti-Semitism, but that was a headline and it was not the actual story. So you may have your facts wrong there on that. I'm not anti-Semitic. Not a single bone in my body is anti-Semitic. As a matter of fact, I think that one of the problems is in this country is constantly accusing people of all kinds of hate, whether it's anti-Semitism, racism, being homophobic, all of these things. I think that what we need to focus on is that we're all people and making sure that we remember that humanity is something that's extremely important. And that's why we're having this chat tonight, is because we're both against all of these wars.
Let's go to the next part here. So that is one that she's spoken on multiple times. That's the part at the beginning. Yes, this part at the beginning, which I did skip. I saved it for last because it leads into the Piers Morgan segment with her on it. This is what she said at the beginning. Pay attention.
Having these conversations because the Trump administration is filled with neocons. If it wasn't filled with neocons, we wouldn't need this conversation. He said anti-war. You're very clear about that. You're super clear about that. I'm clear about it. But all of a sudden, we're having a conversation about how we might go to war. So how do you think the neocons got there, and how powerful do you think they are within the Trump administration?
Well, I would say they're powerful on both sides of the aisle, to be honest with you. We saw Democrats.
Okay, so that's a repeat of the earlier part. So I missed the question that Jink asked at the beginning there, where he was asking her specifically about Trump's administration. Now, you saw the way that she responded to Cenk Uygur in that conversation. And don't forget, there was the moment when he asked about the protesters and the people who have been, or either have been deported or are waiting to be deported, right? This is night and day. I want you to see what she said to Piers Morgan about the protesters. And I think you're going to see a big difference. Watch this.
Because people like you, Marjorie, people like you said two things.
You mean like the pro-Hamas rioters?
No. I'm talking about
came in and occupied our capital on October 18th. That Rashida Tlaib herself-led.
Answer my question.
No, wait, we're in 2023, Piers.
Marjorie, answer my question.
We just had a pro-Hamas mob.
You've written a book in which you talk about these things.
Okay. And Rashida Tlaib.
Can I ask you a question?
Does everybody notice the difference? So when having this conversation with Piers Morgan, she called them the pro-Hamas rioters. Then she later on refers to them as the pro-Hamas mob. Why is it that when she had that conversation with Cenk Uygur, why didn't she refer to them as that? That's the question that I have. So which one is the real Marjorie Taylor Greene? Is it the Marjorie Taylor Greene that we saw here on Piers Morgan that called them rioters and mob? Is it the Marjorie Taylor Greene that we saw talking to Cenk Uygur saying that, well, this free speech is for those who are Americans, not if you're here on a visa or a green card? Or is it the Marjorie Taylor Greene that we saw a couple weeks ago kick people out of her town hall? If you're wondering if Marjorie Taylor Greene takes money from AIPAC, she does. It's very little when you compare it to the other ones. What I saw on Open Secrets was $2,000, so very, very small. But she does take money from AIPAC. So it's almost like she has her foot on the AIPAC side just a little bit, just enough so that they're probably not likely to come after her, but not as much as others so that she can still take a step back and say that she's anti-war. I really wonder, you guys, I just want people to know that we can have a better world. We can have a better country. We really can. And yeah, this was the right thing to do. When she decided to sink that bill that was going to punish boycotts of Israel with prison, that was the right thing to do. I'm not here to tell you that was wrong. Some people are. I saw some people, that are Democrat loyalists, and they're trying to say, oh, this is a bad thing. Like, no, that's actually not a bad thing. That's a good thing. But because she seems to, I don't know, it's almost like she's trying to play both sides. Like she's saying she's anti-war, but she's still trying to protect Israel. Something to think about, folks. Something to think about. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.